Today, we're going to be breaking down a wide receiver football IQ quiz to test your knowledge of the position. So if you're not familiar with our quiz style videos, guys, we're going to show a pre-snap clip or a pre-snap look, ask you a series of questions about the look, and then give you a chance to pause the video, think about your answer, and we're going to talk about why your answer is right, wrong, and show the correct way to run the route. So the first question that we are going to ask is, how would you guys run a 5-yard out route? So a 5-yard out versus this type of coverage. So how would you guys run a 5-yard out versus this type of coverage? You guys can go ahead and pause the video and think about your answer. So pause the video. All right, let's break this thing down. So number one thing as a wide receiver when you're coming up to the line of scrimmage is you need to have a plan of action. That is the whole purpose of these videos, is to help you guys come up with a plan. Now, I'm not saying that a plan that you have off the line of scrimmage is what you're always going to use. Sometimes the DB will change up his leverage, change up his coverage, and we have to be able to react. But we need that initial thought process. So there's two things that we're looking for with my plan. We are looking for the DB's leverage. So that's essentially his shade, right? Is he shaded to the outside? Is he shaded right in front of me? Or is he shaded to the inside? I call that outside leverage, head up leverage, or inside leverage, right? So that tells me what his goal is with the coverage and what routes he's trying to prevent. And then the second thing I want to look for is the distance he has away from me, right? Outside leverage, maybe at 5 or 7 yards, is going to be a little bit different on a 5-yard out than outside shade, maybe about 1 to 2 yards away in press, like it is in this specific example. So we see that he's outside leverage, and what that means, he's trying to take away the outside. He does not want me to run a 5-yard out, a 10-yard out, a corner, a fade. He wants to force everything to the inside, which is where he has safety help. Now, in a real game, he'll have safety help, but in one-on-ones, you guys, if you line up with a reduced split, which means you're lined up closer to the hash, this DB's not an idiot. He knows that you're probably not cutting his split down to run something over the middle, so he's going to be outside shade. Now, in a real game, we could get a little bit more creative with this, but if you guys said that, oh, I'm going to go try to square up the DB, close the distance to them, give him a fake inside, and then get to the outside. The second you start to attack that DB's leverage, he is going to keep that leverage, you guys. So if you guys said we're going to attack his inside shoulder and inside hip for 5 yards to try to flip him, then slip underneath him, that is correct, and we're going to break down why. So let's look at this full speed example from Claypool. He comes off the ball, attacks that inside shoulder, works a throw-by move, and you see the amount of space that he gave his quarterback to throw him open. That's why we want to work to the inside, because guys, even if we get to the outside of this DB, he is going to keep his leverage. My stem is going to get really wide, and when I break to the out route, quarterback's not going to have a ton of space with the guy right on our hip. So we have to give the quarterback room, guys, especially on a 5-yard out, fellas, especially against man coverage. A quarterback would rather have a semi-slower break than a fast one-step break with no room, right? And we're going to talk about that later, and we're going to show examples of that later. So comes off the ball, when we attack that inside shoulder, when we attack that inside hip, it is very important that you guys are running hard, right? We are trying to sell like I'm doing an inside route, like a quick post, a dig, a drag, something over the middle. So I got to run with some speed. I got to make sure that I'm covering ground too. So that means that I need long strides, and my hips, my shoulders, my head, everything needs to commit to the inside, because that's what's going to get that DB to overcommit, especially in a one-on-one situation or a real game situation when he has safety help over the inside. So if you guys said attack the inside shoulder, attack the inside hip, you would be 100% correct. Great example from Chase Claypool highlighting how you would run that route. So now, next route example, we're going to be talking about a goal line slant route. Now, this is a little bit different. We haven't really talked about this specific situation on this channel yet. Now, before I break that down, fellas, if you're a wide receiver and you would like to train with myself and my staff of coaches this offseason, we're going to be coming out to 9 more states this offseason for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camps. Next up on our camp tour, we'll be coming out to Chicago, Illinois, then Buffalo, Atlanta, Houston, Philly, Detroit, Boise, and Los Angeles, California. So guys, if you're local to one of those cities and you would like to train with us, check out that very first link in the description below. Our Chicago camp is sold out, as well as our Houston camp, our Philly camp, our Boise camp actually sold out yesterday, but we have available spots in Buffalo. I know it says sold out, but we had a couple cancellations in Atlanta, and then we're going to be available in Detroit and Los Angeles. So guys, if you want to train with those spots are filling up quick, they will be gone within this month, probably before April 1st. So guys, check out that very first link in the description below if you would like to sign up. We appreciate all the support. Let's get back to this video. So now let's talk about that goal line slant. So let's talk about the situation. So I'm going to give you guys a chance to pause the video. So how do you guys think you would run? This is in the red zone. So this is like probably the 5-yard line that they are on. How would you guys run a slant route versus a DB in this specific coverage? So how would you guys run a slant route versus a DB in this specific coverage? You guys can go ahead and pause the video and think about your answer. So pause the video. All right, let's break this thing down. So first things first here, this is going to be a bad example of this. This is not a good rep from the wide receiver. He gets locked up on this, but we're going to show a positive example, or a correct example, I should say, of Davante Adams doing the right way on this coverage look. So we have a DB who's lined up inside shade, right? I know it's a little bit tough to tell. How you can tell when you're watching film or watching clips like this, because I know a lot of you guys use this for film study, is you look at the middle of his stance. If the middle of his body is even with my front or with the receiver's front foot, that tells you that he's inside shade. If the middle of his body is even with our back foot, that tells you that he is outside shade. And then if he's just kind of squared up midline to midline with us, tells you that he's head up, especially when you get an angle like this. Now, I'm sure a lot of you said that, oh, you'd want to attack his outside shoulder and outside hip on a diamond release. So a diamond release is where you take 3 hard steps at this DB's outside shoulder and outside hip. The goal would be to get him to flip his hips open, and then we slip back underneath. Now, here's the problem with that diamond release right now, because it's the red zone. So he's not going to be threatened by our speed. If I'm running full speed and it looks like I'm running the back corner of the end zone, he's going to stay patient because he knows that you don't have that much field space to work with. On the 50-yard line, absolutely he's going to be threatened by that, and that's what will work. So this receiver does that. He does that diamond release to the outside, but that DB just stays nice and patient, never commits his hips, doesn't open up. Could this receiver run a little bit tighter to him? Absolutely, guys. You never want to, on a diamond release, run away from the contact, because even if this guy would open up his hips and we try to slip back underneath him, it's an easy recovery, and he could beat me to the catch point. So we have to make sure that we are attacking his outside hip and outside shoulder, not just a 45-degree angle. So again, like I said, this is a bad example. This is not how we want to run this route, especially in the goal line. There is another element that you want to do to it. Guys, that was the right idea. That's how you want to run the route. However, there are some elements that you need to add to that diamond release when you're on the goal line. And that is going to be something called a peek back move. So let's look at this example here from Davante Adams. So pretty similar situation. He's on about the 3-yard line, or maybe I think this is the 5. This is just like the line of scrimmage line. It's about the 3-yard line. Got a DB who's inside shade, disciplined DB, watching our hips, right? Reading our body language. And he's going to do this diamond release on a slant. And guys, a lot of guys, when you have inside shade press, they think on a slant, oh, I'm just going to give a quick move and then get to the inside and go. Remember, we talked about this when that DB was an outside shade press on the out route. If I force it, he's going to keep that leverage. He's going to get hands. He's going to force me to the inside. And so let's say it's a double slant concept and you're this outside receiver. You're going to be running this slant right on top of your slot, and that's poor spacing on the play. So that's why we attack outside shoulder and outside hip. Not only will it get us open, keep spacing. So watch what Adams does here. He attacks him, 3 steps to the outside, but he gives that little glance. And that's why it's important to think about this on the goal line. You guys, it's a little bit different because we're on the goal line. Because remember, I'm not gonna get him to open up by putting my head down and running hard. I need to add a little creativity to it. So we attack him. It's the same 3 steps, 1, 2, 3, but he gives that little glance back. Because on a goal line fade, the ball is going to be up sooner, so a receiver is going to look back sooner. 50-yard line, middle of the field, on a fade ball, receivers are taught to keep their head down for maybe about 10 yards. Don't look until you get separation. On the goal line, the ball's going to be there, so we have to get my head around. So you peeking back slightly to the inside on this diamond release is something that could get that DB to open up. Expect the fade, especially if we've hit it a couple times, because Adams obviously hits that goal line fade very often. So this is a great example of how you guys would run that slant route versus an inside shade press guy, not in the middle of the field, more so on the goal line, okay? So now, next example we're going to talk about here, next question, I should say. How would you guys run a 10-yard out versus this specific coverage? So how would you guys run a 10-yard out versus this specific coverage? You guys can go ahead and pause the video and think about your answers. So pause the video. All right, let's break this thing down. So first things first, what are we looking at as a receiver? We're looking at leverage and we're looking at distance. So we see that this guy is in press coverage. He's not right up on the line of scrimmage, maybe about a yard away, and he's inside leverage. So if I have to run an outside breaking route, that's favorable, right? He's inside shade. He wants to stop the inside route. He wants to force me to the outside, though. He doesn't want to get beat inside, but he wants to force me to his help, which is the sideline. If I run out of bounds, not doing anybody any good. If I break on the out route and I'm like 2 steps from the sideline, not doing anybody any good. So if you guys set off the ball, you want to attack this DB's leverage inside, try to get him to move and hold his leverage, then release to the outside, that would be correct. Now, this receiver does that, but he does it incorrectly. And we're going to show a correct example of Stephon Diggs working the same exact route, but doing it correctly after this. So what he does, he gives a little move inside, but you see how wide he takes his stem. Guys, there is something on routes called getting skinny. Getting skinny means that when you're you were running your route, you were trying to run hip to hip with the DB, and you were getting into his cushion. You were getting into his frame, especially when you have inside shade press and you have to run an outside route like a comeback, an out, a corner. You got to give your quarterback room. If I don't give him room and I run away from contact, this is ultimately going to be the result. So he gives him a move inside. Maybe not the best move. Could he have sold it a little bit more? Absolutely, guys. When a DB's inside shade, the best way to get him to move is make him think you are running where he doesn't want you to go. Where does he not want you to go? Doesn't want you to go inside. So let's make him think I'm going there. Let's give him a hard fake inside. Let's give him something that's going to at least just make him step so we could get a free outside release and stay as tight as we can to him, hip to hip. So when he comes off the ball, you see how wide he takes this stem. So now, guys, on paper, your route should look like this. Right now, his route is looking like this and cutting. There is not enough field space out there, right? So when he makes this cut, you see how he cuts, he gets a little separation, he pushes a little bit, that's fine. But when he breaks on this thing, guys, a quarterback is either got to throw that so freaking early and anticipate it, but you got to understand, guys, from a quarterback perspective, because I have the perspective of both positions, this guy, when he bursts up, he's expecting us to stay in a straight line, cut at a certain spot, and give us room. When we go like this and then cut, that screws up timing with his drop, screws up timing with his release, and that's why the ball is thrown behind, especially in an environment like the Senior Bowl where they don't have a ton of chemistry. He doesn't know where we're breaking, guys, so we have to run the route correctly. You have to get skinny. We can't cut down the field space, right? So when we're getting skinny, a lot of you guys say, well, why would I want to get contact with the DB? Because that'll help us get separation. If you're hip to hip with him and you're leaning into him, you're using your size, even if you're a shorter receiver and you're getting into his cushion, when you break, there's a way you could push off without getting called for the push off. And that's what we're going to show with Stephon Diggs. So guys, outside route versus inside shade press, got to make sure we attack his leverage and we got to make sure we give him room. So let's look at Diggs here. Inside shade, he's running an out route. It's actually a little bit deeper of an out route, but same concept. So he comes off the ball, doesn't necessarily attack leverage, but look at that stem, getting into his cushion. Give the quarterback room to throw us open. So he comes off the ball. He gives a little hesitation move, works to the outside, but look at this shoulder and look at this hip. That's called getting skinny, you guys. Get into the frame of the DB. So at the break point right there, you can push. Because, guys, again, a push-off will be called if you extend your arm and just push this guy in the back. But if you're leaning into him and we're getting physical on the route, and I essentially almost push off with my elbow, I call it a chicken wing concept or a chicken wing move, and I push off with that elbow, you're going to get so much separation at this break point. Because if we're running hard, selling vertical, this guy's running hard, we're selling like it's a fade route, and then we lean into him and just cut on a dime, we got separation, and because I got skinny, I gave the quarterback to lead me. Guys, there's no defense for a perfect throw. Like whenever we do our camps and we do one-on-ones, we'll get talented DBs out there, right? And the quarterbacks will throw this thing super late when the receiver's open. It makes the DBs look insane. Crazy talented, getting all these crazy picks. It's because we're throwing it late, guys. There's no defense for a perfect throw, and if you give your quarterback room to make that throw, that's easy money. You have to run quarterback-friendly routes so the timing can be there. Make his job easy.